TikTok told you to do what now? Let's talk about some viral real estate advice that looks sexy online but will leave your wallet crying in real life. Today we have Jennifer Sells with the Sells team at eXp Realty. Thanks so much for being on, Jen.
No, thanks for having me. I love this. It's not often that two realtors from different brokerages sit at the same table to discuss, current events or things going on in the real estate market. So I love it. I love the collaboration. Let's do this, girl.
Yes.
Let's talk about TikTok.
I'm really excited about this teaming up with Jen Sells because she's awesome, first of all, but also she's got more experience than I do in real estate. And I love learning stuff, and I've learned some kind of cool little tidbits from you. So anyways, it's fun to team up.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So what's the first thing that TikTok, have you seen any of these TikTok videos with real estate advice that you're just like, what? WTS?
Yes. I mean, there's so many different things that we could hit on, and, we're going to keep this one shorter. So I think the one that kind of gets me is when they're in there talking about how the interest rates are really high.
Oh,
and that it's a bad time to buy. That's maybe the dumbest thing I've ever heard because, well, first of all, is there ever a right time to buy?
no, you cannot time the market. The best time to buy, if you don't already own real estate, the best time to buy is as soon as you can.
Well, here's my answer to that, right? My answer to, when is the right time to buy is when you can afford to buy and you're ready to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter what the interest rates are. It doesn't matter that none of that matters, right? Because you're either going to pay somebody else's mortgage or you're going to pay for your own mortgage, right? So when you're comfortable and you're ready to buy, that's the right time to buy. And period.
I agree. I totally agree. Now, there are seasonal market cycles that go like this from year to year. Sometimes the market changes and there's no crystal ball, so you can't count on that. But, you can say during the winter and over the holidays, a lot of sellers will take their listings down because they don't want to deal with showings over the holidays.
Right.
But for the sellers who still have their listings active during Thanksgiving and New Year's, those people need to sell, and they're going to be willing to do some deals. So, there is a little bit of timing sometimes, just like with the sellers,
like right now, I have at least 5 buyers that I'm working with this week, and it's a great time to go and look at houses. But back to the point, when it came to interest rates, right? They're specifically telling people not to buy now because the interest rates are too high. And that just drives me crazy because, okay, so let's say a house is $500,000 right now. Okay. And the interest rate is, I don't know, I'm not a lender, 6.5%. Okay. And your payment's going to be XYZ on that. Right now we got to look at property, and you can get, depending on what kind of loan, like conventional loan, you can get up to 6% back paid for by the seller. FHA loan and some other loans, you can get 3% paid back by the seller for your closing costs or whatever. And so just because it's not a super hot market right now and interest rates are a little bit higher, you can get a house lower price. You can get concessions paid. You can get inspection items completed versus what happens when the interest rates go down. What happens? Interest rates go down, prices go
up. Yeah, and I'll just pop in with a couple of stats on that. Right now in Denver Metro, 66% of deals are getting seller concessions that average just under 12 grand. I routinely write offers asking for 10 grand in seller concessions, and we often get that. And that's something that in a different market, you wouldn't necessarily be able to do.
2019, 2020, 2021, worst years in real estate, in my opinion. Everybody else thinks it was great. That's when everybody wanted to get their real estate license. They would jump in, they would start writing offers, and it was a mad frenzy. People were buying houses and not inspecting them people were saying that they were going to cover any appraisal gap. So if the house appraised for $500,000 and they were competing with 20 other offers, that they would pay up to $550,000. So they're paying $50,000 more out of their pocket because the interest rate is low. Are you nuts? Are you nuts?
Well, and
No.
this whole thing about interest rates are so high is such bullshit. It is such bullshit because if you look at the data, a 6% mortgage rate historically, decade over decade, since we started keeping track of this data, since we started doing these 30-year mortgages, I think I want to say in the 40s is when the data begins. So now we have 60, 80 years of data.
Mhm.
And in that 80 years, guess what some of the lowest interest rates are? 6%.
Right.
6% is not high. It's just that the COVID years of 3 and 4% were such an anomaly.
Right.
I don't think we'll ever see that again.
We won't.
And so anyone who is saying, oh, well, I'm going to wait until it gets back in the 5s or the 4s, like, keep dreaming. And by the way,
while you're doing that, our average appreciation is just going to keep going up. And we're going to have more and more investors buying those entry-level houses. So while you're waiting for interest rates to go down, you're just kicking yourself in the pants because,
because while you're waiting for interest rates to go down, house values are climbing. And once you get into the house, not only are you benefiting from the appreciation of the value, just because that's how real estate works, but you're also missing out on building additional equity by, starting to pay that loan down. So that puts us right into, let's talk about this 50-year mortgage stuff. Who thinks that's a great idea?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's pros and cons, right? I think that the housing affordability in general doesn't match. So, I'm sure you're going to get a comment about our last discussion. Somebody's going to say, back in the 80s when it was 18% interest rate, the house prices were only 80,000, right? I'm sure, right? But there's pros and there's cons to it. I mean, you can break down the math and you can say on a 50-year mortgage, versus a 30-year, you're going to pay $375,000 more in interest over that time, right? Mm-hmm. But if you educate your buyers right and you say, okay, fine, get the 50-year mortgage, but pay it like it's a 30, right? So pay it off faster. Your strategies in there, right?
But that's what people were doing that led to the crash. They were getting mortgages that they couldn't really afford and, or getting an ARM or getting an interest-only loan with the idea that they would pay more. But if you don't have to, you don't.
Okay, time, okay? Because the difference in what you're talking about in this is that you're qualifying to get a 50-year mortgage. They are pulling your credit. They are doing all these other things. The problem that we had back in the bailout that I swear I never will live through again is that we had all of these loans that were stated income. I'm a stripper and I wasn't, but they paid me to put my clothes back on. But anyways, let's just say I'm a stripper and I make, $500 an hour and I can document that, I can just show you my bank statements. They were getting a loan, right, off of that. And that's what caused all of this crash. And then back then, and I know this personally, is that I didn't think anything illegal about it, and it wasn't illegal at the time. But, if I put a buyer under contract, I'd be like, who's the appraiser? Right. And then I would send the appraiser all the stuff and be like, hey, Gary, what's up? We got this guy who's going under contract. You can't do that anymore. Thank God. Right. So, yes, I think a 50-year mortgage can get people into trouble if they use it wrong. But if we're reputable lenders who are doing it, I think it could free up that housing for some people.
I mean, housing affordability is an issue, but I'm just going to stay on, sure, maybe there's some exceptions to the rule,
right,
where a 50-year mortgage might make sense for somebody. But in my opinion, by and large, it's going to be a bunch of people who let me just do the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Let's do the numbers. So if you get, now these numbers are a $450,000 loan at 6.25%.
Right.
If you had a 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, you're saving a whopping $317 a month. And by the end of it, you will have paid $365,000 more in interest than if it was a 30-year loan. So I'm not saying 365,000 total. I'm saying 365,000 more than on top of the hundreds of thousands that you're already
paying on
a 30-year.
Mm-hmm.
So when the savings is $300 a month, like back to the stripper, I'm over here like I would rather have you go strip a night a week. Like, I think that's a smarter plan than getting a 50-year mortgage. Just go sell your body one night a week. This is my professional advice.
We're so pro here today. Anyways,
The point stands.
But let's go back to the arguments that are going to be made on this. Okay. The average homeowner right now, I think, is moving in and out of their house between 7 and 10 years. So the question is, right, with these 50 years, are we going to appreciate enough in the 7 years for it to cover the deficit, right? So on a 30-year, you're paying it down a little bit faster, right? So on a 50-year, are we going to appreciate enough in the market to cover it? So here's my answer, and I could be totally wrong. So let's check us in 7 years, right? If I'm still doing this career, I will be, trust me. Anyways, but I actually think that it's going to make this market go crazy again.
That definitely could. It could. But back to the equity thing and back to the numbers. So you're saying people move, or I'm sorry, not you're saying, but people generally move every, what is it,
7 to 10 years.
7 to 10
I don't
years?
know. It depends on who you ask, right?
Yeah, it's like 5 to 10 years, somewhere in there. So on that loan example, your equity after 10 years in a 30-year mortgage is 77 grand that you could then roll into your next property, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the 50-year mortgage, the equity after 10 years is only 31. So you just missed out on $40,000.
Barely cover your real estate fees.
Right. You can barely cover your real estate fees after 10 years in order to save yourself $300 a month.
Which is why I'm trying to tell, if the 50s come up, right, is why I would say that we need to, if you're going to get a 50-year mortgage, if you have that extra amount each month, to go ahead and pay it like it's 30, right? That's what I would do. But
that's the only way.
I do think it will. If they release the 50s, I think we're going to go a little bit crazy in the market again. And I think luxury real estate is really going to take off. I think that the $1 million and up are going to benefit the most from that. You know?
Well, so back to the TikTok advice.
Yeah.
Another one. So we were talking about, interest rates are so high, wait for interest rates to come down is some of the bad TikTok advice. And another one, which it cracks me up how prevalent this still is. Wait to buy because the crash is coming.
Do you know, I have heard that from every single buyer, I swear. Well, no, not every single buyer, but the majority of my buyers do say, well, my dad said, it's a really bad time to buy and the crash is coming. Well, I have some choice things that sometimes I say, but I won't say here.
I think one of the things to say is, where are you getting your information from about this crash that's coming? Because usually it's from somebody's dad or somebody's friend or somebody's uncle or, somebody who is not in the business of real estate and they are not really deeply immersed in the industry and the numbers and what's going on and how economic data, informs and shapes what's happening in the housing market.
So, have you ever talked to a financial planner before? I'm sure you have. most financial planners or most people in that realm of the world will tell you that your house is not an investment anyway. You have to have a place to live. So back to my initial point is you're either going to pay somebody else's mortgage by living in a rental, or you're going to own it yourself. And it doesn't matter if the market crashes, because the market always comes back. In 2008, we did the bailout. Let's talk about Castle Rock specifically, right? 2008, people were doing shorts. I think I did 96 short sales with my ex-husband in a row, right? And then by 2011, the market had recovered and we were selling slightly above 2008 prices. By 2012, we were 14%. 2011, we were 12% over 2012, right? So, and it just kept going up and we went up to a 16%. Like we recovered so quickly, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Had you just waited to buy, I mean, I think that if you had a good job and you could buy in the bailout years, it would have been the best time ever. I mean, there was houses in Diamond Ridge selling for like $400,000. Those are worth $3 million now, a lot of them. So yeah, don't listen to TikTok. They don't know what they're talking about. I mean, don't listen to dad and your uncle and all those people who don't really understand the long-term picture of it.
Well, and buyers, especially if they don't have a ton of money, they get excited about foreclosures and they want to get a deal.
You're not going to get one anyway.
And the fact is, yeah, because people with all cash are buying those, first of all.
Well, part of the bailout was that the banks no longer sold. So I used to deal foreclosures for Chase and Bank of America and Countrywide, right? And so there was years when I think we sold like 68 to 75 of those in 1 year. But the part of the bailout is that the banks can no longer do that. So because what was happening is, let's say you lived on AB or 123 Cellar Street, right? And the third house down the street went to foreclosure and they only owed 200,000 on it, and all the other houses in the neighborhood were worth 300, or 400, right? So as soon as we sold that and it was public record, all of those houses on the street lost their value. So part of the bailout is that if it's a primary home, they are no longer selling that to the public. So those of you who are waiting for a foreclosure, keep on waiting because you're not getting it.
Oh, and besides that, what I was going to say is that the foreclosures are making up 1%, less than 1% of deals. Like it's not something that is like starting to happen again, which is, I feel like people want it to, but it's not.
It's never going to happen again.
And besides that, the other thing that prevents any sort of crash from happening is the amount of equity that U.S. homeowners have in their homes. I wish I had the stats off the top of my head. I don't, but
they have a lot of equity.
There is so much equity, people sitting on so much equity. So what that means is that if someone were to get in trouble on their home and get close to or in a foreclosure status, they usually have enough equity to sell it
at a lower price,
be done with it,
right? But back to your point too with the foreclosures is that in the bailout, what they do is they take zip codes and they take everything that has gone to foreclosure and they sell it to like mutual funds or large investors, and they come in and buy them. And then that way it's never recorded that on your street, right, that everything is going down. That was just part of the deal. So the only thing that gets released to the public that I'm aware of anymore, and I could be wrong because it could have changed recently, but I doubt it, is secondary homes can be released, and anything that was a jumbo loan or above, those can get released, but they're very rarely happening. So stop waiting for the foreclosures. It's not going to happen.
I completely agree with you. This sentiment about like, you have to have somewhere to live. Everyone has to have somewhere to live. And most people, again, there are exceptions to the rule, but most people are going to have to pay to live somewhere. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're paying to live somewhere and you have this monthly housing expense, why would you not be paying into your own financial asset instead of paying someone else's financial asset for them? Yeah. Like that's the bottom line. Well, more bad TikTok advice. You can buy a house for $1.
Yeah.
No. Have you ever seen anyone buy a house for $1?
Well, technically, yes. but it's not as simple as everybody thinks, right? Yeah, you can buy a house for $1, but you still have to have, earnest money, and then that can be refunded to you at closing. And usually if you're doing that, you're getting a down payment assistance loan, and your interest rate is significantly higher than if you had just saved some more money to put down, right? So you can get a loan at 3% down and bring your closing costs, and your interest rate is much less usually, and I'm not a lender, but much less usually than if you're getting down payment assistance. So,
Well, and
whatever.
I think you can buy, I think that there are some programs, especially for first-time home buyers, where you can get in for $1,000. And we know that if you have a VA loan or a USDA loan, you can get a 100% loan to value loan and come in with a $0 down. But that does not count. I mean, closing costs aren't included in that. And the earnest money. So the earnest money is something that, just to explain it real quick, when you go under contract, so you have agreed to buy this house and the seller has agreed to sell it to you, one of the very first things that needs to be done is earnest money needs to be deposited with title, and that earnest money ratifies the contract. It is typically 1% of the purchase price. So let's say $500,000 house, it's a $5,000 that you need to have in your pocket to go give to the title company right away. So even though you could technically buy something with 1,000, it's really going to be hard to get a seller to accept an offer. Maybe not in this buyer's market, but typically the earnest money is the earnest money, and that's what we're expecting you to deposit.
Right. And so back to it. Yes, you can buy a house for $0, but you have to have money to make money in a way. I mean, there's going to be agents that argue with that statement that when they see this, but let's say you can talk a seller into putting $500 down, and then you can talk the seller into doing your closing costs, and you get a down payment assistance. Absolutely. You may get money back at closing, like your earnest money back at closing, and you bought it for $1. But is it misleading to the public? Absolutely.
Yes. So more bad TikTok advice. If you want to buy a house, don't work with a realtor. Just go straight to the listing agent.
Oh, Lord.
What? So
you don't want representation. That's what you're saying. You want the seller to be fully represented, and the agent already has a relationship with that seller, already knows what the seller's, needs and desires are. And yes, we can transfer into our neutral transaction broker status, our neutral status, right? But the thing that gets me is the reason the buyers are doing it is because they think it's saving them money, right? It's not saving you money. It's not saving you money at all. And I'm going to say that again and again. And when I take a listing, I take it at a X percent. We're not going to discuss commissions here, but I take it at X percent. And if a buyer's agent brings it, I'm going to pay out another X percent out of my commission to the buyer's agent. If I'm going to represent this person in front of me, I'm still making that. So it's not saving anybody anything.
No, and most of the time buyers are not paying their buyer's agent.
Correct.
And that's the thing. Like, once you sign a contract to hire any real estate broker in Colorado to be your agent, as soon as that contract is signed, the fact that they're your agent means that they are now they owe you fiduciary duties, they owe you confidentiality. There's some things in that contract and the act of hiring someone to be your agent, it turns into more like attorney-client kind of privilege stuff, or like a therapist-patient. And so why would you not want a professional to be on your side as you get ready to purchase the largest thing of your life? Probably this is probably the most money you ever spent, ever will spend. People don't go around spending several $100,000 very often. Why wouldn't you want a professional in the industry to be at your side, to have your back?
We know things about neighborhoods and houses and all kinds of stuff that you, a buyer, aren't going to know, right? And I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole. I won't, but there's a house in a neighborhood on the south side, I won't say the neighborhood, that somebody has the male of the house has died. The last 4 people that have bought that house, the husband has died.
Oh.
And I know this, right? Does a buyer from California know, like, you need to hire a local agent because the local agent knows the things about certain areas that other people don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and just back to the whole thing about, going to the listing agent to get a deal. I mean, the listing agent was hired by the seller and they are working on the seller's behalf in the seller's best interest, not in the buyer's best interest at all. So it just makes no sense to me. And it's some of the most terrible TikTok advice you can get.
And this is going to cause some controversy, and I'm just going to say it and we'll wrap it up. But as a seller's agent who turns into a transaction broker, the neutral agent, I'm not doing it for less. Why? Why, Kiki? Why am I not doing it for less?
Because now you're doing double the work. You're doing
And my liability goes up way more than in a normal transaction. So no, I am not doing it for free. So anyways.
Yeah, it's not getting discounted. Yeah, it's no help to the buyer.
So do us a favor. If you've seen something on TikTok, send your comments in and maybe we can address that another time.
Yeah, I agree. If you see trash advice on TikTok, tag us and we'll react.
Yeah, that would be fun.
If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.